I know the title of this video sounds like some kind of fake scenario a culture war obsessed autist would dream up, but this is a true story. This is something that actually happened to me. I got hit by a vehicle in a hit and run incident, and then when I was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, the paramedic got mad at me for misgendering her. And that's only the tip of the iceberg of all the BS I had to deal with that day. It was like I was encountering incompetence and disrespect every step of the way. And it wasn't only that day that sucked, because I was injured, and let me tell you, if you think it's hard being an average to below average looking guy as it is, I can tell you it's a lot worse when you're also physically handicapped on top of that. And I only got a brief taste of that, but that was enough. So let's get into it. One beautiful Friday morning, I was walking across the street when I got hit by a car. And it actually wasn't a car, it was a van. It was one of those big white work vans. I think it was only going maybe 20 miles per hour, so it wasn't that bad, I guess. I did not sustain any critical injuries or anything like that, but I did break a bone and my backpack broke. Like the straps ripped off from the impact and my backpack just went flying and my glasses broke. I'm not even sure exactly how it happened, but I just remember, I'm walking across the street with my earbuds in and I'm listening to that Shy Glizzy song that's like, I'm so fucking awesome. I'm so awesome. Then I turn my head and there's a van accelerating right at me, like right there. So I didn't have time to get out of the way. So I just instinctually put my hand out as if I'm Superman or something, like I'm going to block this moving vehicle with my hand. So I remember getting hit. Then I hit the ground really hard, face down. Then when I looked up, my backpack was like 10 yards away from me, and my glasses were over near my backpack. They were all crooked, and one of the lenses was missing. So then this Mexican guy gets out of the van and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." So then I asked him to help me over to the side of the road. So he helped me walk over to the curb because my knees were kind of fucked up. They just healed on their own eventually, but I was limping for a few weeks after that. But yeah, so he helped me get out of the road. Then he was like, "You're good, right?" And I said, "I don't know, just please wait for an ambulance." And I swear to God, this motherfucker that had been already speaking to me in English, this motherfucker goes, no hablo. He was literally walking backwards, headed back to his van when he said this. So then I was like, just wait for the ambulance, please. Because I was already getting my phone out to call 911. I didn't know if I had internal bleeding or, I had no idea how bad I was actually hurt because I knew that at that point I was operating on pure adrenaline. So for all I knew, yeah, I seemed like I was more or less fine. I didn't feel a lot of pain, but I didn't know if that was just because of the adrenaline. And maybe I was actually hurt pretty bad. So the guy just keeps backing up and he's like, no hablo inglés, no hablo. So I'm like, wait, just wait here. Then he gets in his van and he drives off. So then I'm thinking, well, shit, guess I'm all alone now. So I called 911 and I told them I just got hit by a van. They asked me a few questions like, did you hit your head? How fast was the vehicle going? I remember they asked me if I went flying over the top of the car or if I went flying forward. So I said I went forward. Okay, so then I laid down on the grass between the curb and the sidewalk. Then a fire truck arrived in, I want to say like literally 1 minute, because there was a fire station right down the road. So this fireman gets out and he's checking my pulse and my blood pressure, and he's asking me some questions. I remember he asked what day of the week it was, and he asked me who the president was, because I guess he's trying to make sure I don't have brain damage. But it was funny because this was just a couple months after Trump got elected for the first time. So I actually answered the question wrong. He asked me who the president was. I said Obama. Then he was looking at me like, oh shit, this guy's fucked. Then I realized my mistake. So I was like, oh, wait, no, it's Trump. Trump is the president. And the fireman was like, okay. Okay, so then the ambulance arrived and they asked me pretty much all the same questions like, how fast was the car going? Did you go over the car or did it knock you forward, etc.? Okay, then they helped me into the ambulance and they're doing whatever they do, checking my pulse and everything, asking me a bunch of questions. Both of my hands were actually scraped up pretty bad because when I hit the ground, I tried to catch myself, so I pretty much skinned both of my palms. So they bandaged my hands up, and I cannot stress this enough. I was so scared when all this was happening because I really didn't know how bad it was. All I knew was I just got hit by a freaking work van, and when I stood up, it was kind of hard to walk. I'm sure if you've ever been in a serious car wreck or any kind of accident like that, then you know what I'm talking about. It was just pure adrenaline, and it all happened so fast. And I'm already a high anxiety person to begin with, so yeah, I was freaking terrified. So because I was kind of panicking, and also just because I'm a gentleman, I kept answering all of the EMT's questions like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am. I was being polite, and the EMT person was a woman, so I was addressing her as ma'am. So after maybe the third or fourth time I called her ma'am, she goes, I'm not a ma'am. So I was just confused because it was a woman for sure. So I'm thinking, okay, well, she seems pretty young, so maybe it's an age thing. Like she thinks ma'am is just too formal or something. So I just said, oh, sorry. Then a couple minutes later, she asked me something, and I accidentally called her ma'am again, which truthfully, it was just an automatic response. I wasn't even thinking about it. So then she goes, I already told you I'm not a ma'am. Now, as far as I could tell, she did a fine job with her paramedic duties, other than the one little outburst there. But it was very rude, I thought, for her to get mad like that over a simple mistake. Especially considering the mistake I made was obviously just me trying to be polite. It wasn't even until sometime after I got back home and I was thinking about it that I realized, oh, wait, she's probably like non-binary or something. This was 2017 when this happened, so I was well aware of all the woke gender discourse and everything. It was pretty much the peak of the whole I identify as an attack helicopter thing. And so I did know people like that existed, people that are just walking around looking for a reason to feel offended. I knew that was a thing, but up to that point, I had only ever seen stuff like that on the internet. So it didn't even register to me. I just figured, well, damn, this young lady really doesn't like being addressed formally. And I guess that is still a possibility, but after thinking about it after the fact, with how mad she seemed to be about it and the kind of hairstyle she had, because she did have kind of short hair, I'm pretty sure it was a gender thing, which really pisses me off actually because, I was in an ambulance. I had just got hit by a van. I was freaking the fuck out internally. I feel like part of the EMT's job should be to stay calm and try to help the patient stay relaxed. I mean, I could maybe understand if I was just hurling abuse at this person and calling them all kind of slurs and everything, but it wasn't like that at all. I was probably being more polite than most people would be. And I honestly don't give a shit if someone wants to identify it however they want. I think it's retarded, but I don't really care. I'd usually just avoid people like that. But there's a time and a place, folks, okay? While I am in the back of an ambulance, fearing for my life after having been slammed to the ground by a 2-ton vehicle, that is not the time or the place to express your grievances over being misgendered. It's just not. You know, the first time, that was fine. Okay, I called her something she doesn't want to be called. It's silly, but whatever, fine. But obviously, I was trying to be as nice and polite as possible. I obviously did not have ill intentions. So when she snapped at me like that, like, I already told you I'm not a ma'am, you know, it's just not appropriate. And like I said, I didn't even realize why she was offended by it at the time, so I was just confused. You know, I started to think, did I hit my head? What? I was confused. But anyways, so then I got to the hospital and they checked me out. They took some x-rays. Then I was just lying there for a while, waiting. Eventually, a doctor came back and she said they were going to prescribe me some pain medication, but other than some pain and some bruising, she said I was fine. But by that point, I had already figured out myself that my hand must be broken because it was all swelled up like 2 times the regular size, and it was like green and purple. It was obviously broken. So I told her, I'm pretty sure my hand is broke. She acted defensive about it at first. She was like, multiple medical professionals looked at your x-rays, sir. If anything was broken, we would have seen it. So I just held up my hand and I was like, well, something's wrong. And she looked at my hand and she was just like, oh, wait just a second. So then she left and she came back after a couple minutes with another doctor. So then that doctor looked at my hand for a minute and I think he asked me some questions. I can't really remember. So then they both left. And then about 10 minutes later, the male doctor came back with a printout of the x-ray of my hand. And he's like, well, looks like your hand is broken. Then he shows me the x-ray and he explained exactly which bone was broken. And honestly, I could see how they missed it. It was actually just one very small bone. It was the bone inside the hand that connects to the pinky. And it was hard to see on the x-ray. I think they call it like a hairline fracture. So I understand why looking at the x-ray, they missed it. But also it was like, if you just looked at my hand with your own 2 eyes, it was obvious. My hand looked like I was starting to gain mutant powers or some shit. Talking about, that shit looked like near the end of Akira when the guy starts growing into that fucked up monstrosity of flesh. That's what it looked like. I feel like they were relying a bit too much on just looking at the x-rays when they could have just been using their God-given vision, their own 2 eyeballs, to look at my hand, and it would have been obvious to anybody. Like, you didn't have to be a doctor. My hand was clearly broken. But hey, what do I know? I'm not a medical professional. So at some point while I was there, a police officer came to talk to me. He was asking me what happened and where it happened and everything. Apparently there was a witness that saw everything that happened. I don't know where they were because I didn't notice anybody. But I guess this witness also called 911 for me, and he actually got the van's license plate number. So I could have pressed charges. I actually really regret that I didn't because chances are the driver was in the country illegally. So maybe I could have gotten him deported, which you can think whatever you want about immigration and how illegal immigrants should be handled. But I would hope we can all agree that at the very least, if someone commits a hit and run while being here illegally, then they should probably be deported. I hope we can agree on that. But yeah, I never followed up with it. mostly just because of my social anxiety, honestly. Also because I was very busy at that time, just with school and trying to find a job and everything. So, yeah, I screwed up on that. I really should have pursued that further. I should have pressed charges or, I didn't even follow up on it. So I'm pretty sure the guy just didn't even get punished, even though they had the plate number and everything. But anyways, when I was explaining to the cop which direction the van had come from, I told him it was going from east to west, and the cop was like, "Are you sure?" Because the witness said it was going from west to east. So I told him, "Yeah, I'm sure." Then the cop throws up his hands and he's like, "Great, now I gotta redo my whole report." And then he just walked out without saying anything else. Then he came back maybe like 10 to 20 minutes later and he had me sign a witness statement or whatever it was. And the whole time, he just seemed like he was very frustrated with me because I disagreed with the direction the van was going, which he had already written down, I guess. As if it's my fault that the witness gave him the wrong direction. Which also, maybe I'm the one that's wrong and the witness had it right. I'm like 99.99% sure that I know which direction I got hit from, but from the perspective of a police investigation, should they not put it in the report that the witness and the victim had a slightly different account of events? Also, maybe that's reason to think I did hit my fucking head. I don't know. I don't see why he had to redo the whole report, but that's what he said. And he seemed like he was pissed about it. He made me feel like I was being difficult when I was just trying to tell him what happened as accurately as possible. So it's like every step of the way throughout this whole ordeal, I was technically receiving support, but it was always either reluctantly or just incompetently. I do appreciate that we have these systems in place in our society where I wasn't just left on the side of the road to fend for myself, but it's like, why can't any of these people do their job without treating me like I'm a difficult customer? I get that being a first responder probably is a very difficult job, and I'm sure they do end up dealing with a lot of difficult people. So I'm sure that gets to you over time. But I was not being difficult. I was just trying to make it through the situation in one piece. And even after all this, like for the next few weeks when I was recovering, it felt like not just that nobody wanted to help me out, but it felt like people were extra frustrated that I needed help with certain things to begin with. By the way, when I was waiting for my mom to pick me up from the hospital, I'm sitting there with my arm in a sling and my clothes are all ripped up and everything from the accident. So I'm sure I was looking pretty messed up. Then some random guy in the waiting room comes up to me. He started asking me what happened. Then after I told him, he pointed over to the TV they had in there and he was like, "You should probably call that guy." And I look over and there's a commercial playing for one of those injury lawyers that advertises really aggressively. One of those guys where you see the billboards on the side of the road and it's like, "In a wreck? Need a check?" That type of thing. So I'm pretty sure that guy was just there to advertise to people as they're coming out of the hospital. So that's kind of fucked up. But who knows? Maybe it was just some guy trying to make conversation. I don't really know. But yeah, like I was saying, I was pretty handicapped for the next several weeks. My left hand was in a cast and I had to keep it in a sling. Then my right hand was also mostly useless because I skinned my palm really bad when I hit the ground. And also my wrist was all fucked up. Like it just hurt really bad anytime I moved it. And my ankles and my knees were also messed up. They just felt really weak. Like if I'm not careful with the way I'm stepping, my shit's just gonna snap. Then I had this enormous black bruise on my left hip where the grill of the van actually ran into me. And then the first night after all this, I didn't realize how bad it actually was because they gave me pain medicine at the hospital, but that first night afterwards, I woke up at like 3 in the morning and it was just like, imagine the worst bruise you've ever had, but it's your entire body. Anytime I wanted to roll over in bed or just shift a little bit, it was excruciating. They did give me a prescription for some pain medicine, but it was only enough for a few days. I guess I could have made a doctor's appointment and asked for more, and I'm sure they would have given it to me, but I didn't do that for whatever reason. So it was painful. It was very painful. Then I had to go to school the next Monday, which was only, a couple days after that, 'cause this all happened on a Friday. Remember, I said in the beginning I broke my glasses. Well, I didn't have a backup pair, so I had to try my best to find a seat in the front row in all my classes because my vision's not that bad. As long as I'm in the front row, I could usually manage to make out anything the teacher was writing on the board. Oh, yeah, and I also had to drive to school without glasses, which that was actually kind of dangerous. I tried to get my mom or my dad to take off work so they could drive me until I could manage to get a new pair of glasses, because I ordered a new pair the next day after the accident, so it only would have been a few days, but neither of them would do it. My dad acted like I'm a retard for even asking. He was like, "Son, I've been supposed to be wearing glasses while I drive for 20 years, and in all my life, I ain't never wore no damn glasses while I drove." So that sucked. But whatever, I made it. Didn't have any accidents or anything. But yeah, there was one class I had where there was no seats left in the first few rows when I got there. So I actually asked a guy if I could have his seat, which is really hard for me to do, by the way, because I have really bad social anxiety. So say what you want, but it's not easy for me to ask a random person for a favor. So I asked this guy that was sitting in the front row, sitting on the edge in the front row, just because he was the easiest person to ask. And he just looks at me and he goes, "Maybe you should get here earlier if you want to sit here." So I just said, "Okay." Then I went and I sat somewhere in the back. And yeah, I couldn't see shit. This was mechanical vibrations, if I recall correctly. So the whole class is just the teacher writing equations and working problems on the board. It is very hard to follow if you cannot see. And I actually had a class right before that that ended 15 minutes before this one started. So I really couldn't get there any earlier. I was freaking limping around everywhere like the hunchback of Narragansett Dames. It's like there was no way I could even get there earlier. So I was just screwed. Now, I will say there was one time I dropped all my books on the way to class, and these two guys that were nearby ran over and they insisted on helping carry my books all the way to my next class. So it's not like literally everyone in the world was completely heartless. Also, one of my professors seemed really concerned when I emailed her to ask if I could turn in my assignment late because there was a homework assignment due on the day that I got hit and I couldn't make it to campus that day. So there was a few people that at least acted like they cared. So I guess it's not all bad. But yeah, it was a very bad experience. It could have been worse. I am actually very glad that it wasn't worse than it was because, I got hit by a van. If it had been going even 10 to 15 miles per hour faster, then I think it actually could have been very bad. But fortunately, like I say, it was only going, I want to say, about 20 miles per hour. And I guess the guy hit the brakes right before he impacted me, so maybe he actually slowed down a little bit. But yeah, it was bad. Most people I encountered, as far as, first responders, doctors, and everything, just everybody is, I want to say incompetent, but it's not even that necessarily. It's like, well, the paramedic or EMT, whatever she was, she's just a bitch for that, you know. Who cares if you don't want to be called ma'am and I accidentally said ma'am? You know damn well I'm saying that because I'm trying to be polite. You know damn well. Okay, so don't act like I'm doing something wrong there. That's just ridiculous. But then, you know, the doctors and the police officer that was so frustrated that he had to rewrite the report. It's like, this is what your job is. You know, it reminds me back when I worked in fast food, actually. Some of my coworkers sometimes they would get all mad when a lot of customers would come in at the same time, which I get that that is very frustrating when it's already busy and you keep having all these customers come in when you have other things that you need to do as far as like what you're doing back in the kitchen, mopping the floors, washing the dishes and all that. So it is frustrating when that happens, but it's like that is what the job is. Like the primary duty of the job is to serve the customer and give them what they want. Like I'm not saying you have to suck everybody's dick. You know, you don't have to like bow down to the customer. And same as like if you're a doctor, you don't have to like bow down to your patient, but do a good job. And you know, as a police officer, you're taking the report from somebody, you're taking the victim statement or whatever. Be pleasant, you know, like don't get frustrated that you have to rewrite your report. That's just your job. That is what you're getting paid to do. So like this society is bullshit. If you found this video entertaining, please consider watching some of my other videos. There's also some secret videos you can watch for free on my Patreon. No sign up required, so check that out. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. By the way, guys, let me know if you enjoy these kind of videos where I'm just telling some stories from my life. Because this one, for example, I've considered making this video several times before where I tell this story about all this that happened. And I just thought, you know, it doesn't really relate to the usual type of content I put on this channel. So it's like, maybe this isn't that interesting to my regular viewers, basically. So let me know if you feel that way or if you think this actually was very interesting. Okay, so I'm interested to know that. All right, see you next time.